pleasure to be here. St Paul's costs £23,000 a year in fees, and it has a reputation of being one of the most prestigious schools in the country. So how am I on earth? I mean, you look at the name that they give to me. I'm not even a head teacher, I'm a high master. It sort of gives you a sense of a rather grand school. So how on earth am I supposed to stand up in front of you and talk about access to schools such as ours? Well, partly from my own background, because I was the first member of my family to go to university, the first to attend a public school. I was born in a mining community in the north of England, and all my parents wanted me to do was to have the best opportunity. No more, no less, just have the best opportunity. So they fought with my primary school head teacher, my mother told me at the weekend, to put me in for a bursary at an independent school. And I achieved one, and as a consequence, I've been through the system. So I'm not posh, I'm not privileged, and actually my school, although it's expensive, and I need to talk about that, its ethos is not posh or privileged. It's about providing opportunity and developing boys to the best of their ability. It's more like an old grammar school than it is a great British public school. I'll start off just by talking about scholarships and bursaries. The two words are often used as if they're the same, but they're not. They are both fee discounts. So if you want to go to an independent school, it is possible to go there and not pay the headline fee. You need a bursary or a scholarship. Scholarships tend to be given for particular purposes. It might be an academic scholarship, a sports scholarship, a drama scholarship, but the key thing is that a scholarship is not means tested. You're just given it and you're given a remission which might be whatever percentage. Bursaries are means tested, so it's based upon your family wealth, so you'll have to reveal something about your assets and so on. And most schools also offer hardship bursaries. So over the course of the 7 years, if you can't afford the fees, they will often help you. So there's really three types of fee remission. The good news is that both scholarships and bursaries are on the increase in the independent sector. The number of bursaries at ISC schools has increased 31%. Since 2011. The number of scholarships at ISC schools has increased by 15% since 2011. There's now £700 million of discount and remission available at independent schools. And according to the latest census, one third of pupils at independent schools are getting some kind of fee remission through either scholarship or bursary. So ask. If you're interested in a school, don't be coy, ask. Go on the website, go and visit them, ask. There will be, I suspect, a good deal of support available. Does a school offer more bursaries than scholarships? Has it few scholarships? Has it got lots of bursaries? Has it no scholarships? The balance between whether it's offering scholarships, which are not means tested, and bursaries which are, will tell you something about the ethos and the nature of the school. Some are much more focused on bursaries, others are more focused on scholarship. It's entirely up to the school. But ask and find out about the ethos of the school. Going to an independent school from a very humble background worked for me because the school was open to talent wherever it came from. It wasn't about who your parents were and how much money you had. It was about what do you bring to our party. And because of that, after 6 months of settling, I felt very much at home, and it transformed my life. I would not be standing here in front of you. It's given me baggage for life. I want to do the same thing for other people, even at a pretty grand school like St Paul's. But the ethos has got to be right. So I would encourage you to visit the school, to talk to pupils, to find out whether you think its ethos is supportive for people from whatever background. And again, please don't be nervous about it, because schools are very keen to promote that. If that is their ethos, they want a more socially diverse background. So talk to them and you'll find them amenable. So I think there's lots of good news for scholarships and bursaries. A third of ISC pupils are receiving them. So get out there and ask. The bad news, however, is that fee remissions are needed more than they've ever been needed before, for the simple reason that fees are going up at a remarkable rate. What's the average boarding school fee in the UK? 30.5k. The average day school fee, £13,000 per annum. In London, you'll be looking to get away with anything less than 15,000. It is expensive. In the last 25 years, independent school fees have increased 550%, according to The Economist in 2016. Average earnings have increased by just under half that. So there's a gap, and the gap has been growing. Independent schools are increasingly unaffordable, and the pool of families who can afford is shrinking. And that is a matter of significant and serious concern. So, an independent school, as a day school, spends about £13,000 educating a child. In the state sector, it's about £6,000 or £7,000. There is a significant difference. Why are independent schools so expensive? I read in The Economist that there's a facilities arms race, that independent schools are looking to build the fanciest sports, the fanciest music facilities in order to attract rich overseas families and parents, creating a very different type of environment within a school. Perhaps a slightly less attractive one was the implication. And indeed, the Good Schools Guide has recently said that this is what the money is, that's what the fees have been spent on, big capital expenditure programs. And The Economist showed how capital expenditure in independent schools has increased threefold between 1997 and 2010. That's a big increase. However, things aren't quite what they seem. Firstly, building prices have gone up twofold, so in real terms it's not that big a rise. Secondly, not all of these facilities are funded from fees or revenue. Quite a lot are funded from endowment, historic endowment, and also from other sources such as donations. And the number of overseas parents and pupils in British schools? 5%. So how can fees be driven up by capital expenditure designed to attract rich foreigners into our schools when they only comprise 5% of the population? It doesn't quite work. For example, St Paul's School. We are completely rebuilding our school from top to bottom. And it's costing a very, very large sum of money. Why are we rebuilding? Well, we're not a boarding school, so we're not after wealthy foreigners for a start. We're a day school, so it's for London boys. We're rebuilding because the school's falling down. It was built in 1968 to last for 25 years, and we still haven't replaced it. And if we don't, it will fall down. And over half of it has come from donations. And therefore, it's not, although we've got a huge rebuilding programme, it is not driving fees. Capital expenditure does contribute, sure, but it's not the big driver over why fees are so expensive. So why are fees at independent school going up so much? I think the simple answer and the main answer is staff. The staff-pupil ratio at independent schools was nearly 11 pupils to one teacher in about 2000. It's now nearer 9 pupils to one teacher. In the maintained sector, this year, it's 17 pupils to one teacher. And there are 3 times more teaching assistants in the maintained sector because they're slightly cheaper. So you're actually paying for a very good staff-pupil ratio. The second thing about the costs of staff are their salaries. pension contributions have tripled since 1996 for employers. St Paul's School, we now believe that we are competing with all kind of graduate employers to get the very best subject specialists. What makes a great school? High quality people who know their subject. Everybody's chasing high quality people who are mathematicians and physicists. So how can teachers, how can schools attract if they don't pay competitive salaries? A starting teacher at St Paul's gets about £35,000 to £40,000. An ordinary teacher who has no other responsibilities at the peak gets something like £70,000. We are having to pay proper graduate salaries to get top quality people in front of our pupils. And because we're paying that type of money, we're actually attracting people to the sector who wouldn't otherwise have come. And so it's salaries that are driving fees. We also accommodate staff now. Why? Because we can't get good people to stay in London. We've got to accommodate them. We've got to pay for that. So our fees are going up because we are investing in the one thing that most matters in providing an outstanding and quality education, which is people. So I think the fees are high because a quality education is expensive. It's expensive, it costs money, and that is reflected, I think, in the fees. The quality of an English education is in demand. There are 44 ISC schools which have campuses around the world now. They're exporting British education. And indeed, one of the reasons why people internationally are attracted to boarding schools in the UK is not just or necessarily fancy sports or music facilities and magnificent capital expenditure. English speaking, English qualifications which get you access to the top 100 universities in the world, and English is a universal language. The quality of the education is what's attracting people, not just the facilities. So some schools, I think, are increasingly looking to provide a quality education for the world, and indeed to attract boarders in from overseas. And it's fine, but it is a particular type of ethos within that school. They'll probably be very strong on offering scholarships. The problem with all of this, though, is that the increase in fees means that there is this gap with access, a sense in which only the rich are able to afford an independent education. There is a gap between affordability and accessibility for people irrespective of means and on their merit. So how are we going to address that? Well, one way would be to cut fees. Let's get the average independent school fee from £13,000 down to £6,000. More people will be able to afford it. The problem with that is that you'd have to cut the quality of the education, the staffing. You would cut right into the attribute that makes the school good in the first place. So it's not an obvious way forward. The second way forward is for independent schools to say, forget it. We're not about access. We're not about getting people like me into the system and educating them. We are about a quality product. We are contributing to UK PLC. We are going to sell this education abroad. We're going to attract people in, wealthy people in, and that's what we do, which is another way of dealing with it. The third way is to increase bursary provision and to make our schools more accessible. And indeed, more money is needed, more than ever, because the fees are going up disproportionately, which in itself raises a challenge. So it'll actually, I think, cause schools to think, how can we do that? Well, one way is to cross-subsidise. Keep putting the fees up so that the wealthy can pay and continue to pay, but then you give more bursaries from the fee going up within the school. But I don't think that's sustainable in the long term. The second, the most obvious way, is to increase fundraising and endowment, to go to the alumni as they do in America and start to raise funds to enable people to access the school. Why should independent schools want people from any background, regardless of means, to come in the first place? Well, one good reason is charitable status. Schools get relief from certain payments and taxes from the government through charitable status, and part of the definition of public benefit for charitable status is to have people coming from financially disadvantaged background. But that's not a reason as far as I'm concerned. The main reason is let's take the St Paul's example. What do we do? What we're good at, I believe, is educating highly able boys. I think educating the highly able is a special educational need. That special educational need is our specialism, and we want any boy who would benefit from that special educational need provision to come to the school, regardless of means. That's what we would want. I think most schools would say, well, we do this really well. It might be educating the disabled, it might be something else, fine, it might be arts, it might be sport. We do this really well, that's our specialism, and we want anybody who's good at that to come. At St Paul's, we believe in that desire to educate anybody who could benefit it for where they come from, because our founder set the school up on those principles in 1509, to educate boys indifferently. Doesn't matter where they come from all nations and all backgrounds. So it's part of our DNA, as it were. The second reason for wanting to do it is that our communities, independent school communities, are at the moment, I think, very religiously and ethnically diverse. They're international, they're diverse in many ways, but they are not as diverse economically and socially as they used to be, and I think as they could be, and from my own perspective, ought to be. A community that represents the diversity in society has to be a better community, certainly a better community for preparing and educating boys or girls to go out and serve society. How can they serve society if they've not experienced its diversity in their own background and perhaps in their own education? So that's why diversity in all of its various definitions is important. The final reason why I think it's important is because education is still a significant element of social mobility. And if there is good social and high social mobility, then you have a fairer society, because you're educating and giving people the opportunity with the talent, and everybody has equal opportunity. Outcomes are different, but equal opportunities. It also makes a better society, because if society is identifying talent wherever it is found and developing that talent, then it will be both a fairer society, a better society, probably a more productive society as well. You can't just keep recruiting talent from an elite and expect an economy and society to continue to prosper. You have to find it wherever it is found and then educate it, prepare it, and allow it to develop. St Paul's School has drifted from that. Too far for my liking, too far. Too many independent schools have drifted. Those that have that ethos have drifted from that, and it's ground that we have to recapture, and to recapture quickly. St Paul's, we're doing it by increasing the qualifying level of bursaries up to household income of £120,000. So, and that way we're hoping to recognise how expensive our education is, how expensive London is, and to try to help families across a wider range. The moment 5% of boys get bursaries at our school, we're hoping to make that 20% by the early 2020s, so that we are much better equipped to welcome talent and develop it. We don't, however, have any endowment. We're poor, amazingly. So how are we going to do it? Well, the answer is fundraising. And we've talked to our community. I've been doing it for the last 2 years, and they're up for it. You might expect old boys and parents to not be comfortable about raising tens of millions of pounds to help us achieve our goal. They are extraordinarily committed to it. There is a sense that this vision of an open access to increasingly expensive schools is worthwhile and has to be supported through such means. We've also got to get better at partnerships with schools. What happens if we've got £70 million worth of endowment, lots of bursaries come to our school, but nobody's heard about it? Or they think that we're some distant, posh, unattainable school that they wouldn't fit in. We've actually got to get out into communities, work with them to make people think, yeah, I could fit there, I could benefit, I do want to go there. We have to increase our profile, and we have to make it clear that anybody from whatever background could flourish at schools like ours. We're doing that. We need to do more. Schools need to do more if that is their aim and if that is their vision. So, to conclude, constant fee increases in independent schools are not that easy to reconcile with our old desire to be accessible to people with talent from wherever they come from. And that is a real challenge, and we've got to face it. And we have to face it because our schools are increasingly unaffordable, and if we're not careful, detached. As far as I'm concerned, if a school doesn't want to do that, fine. It should probably lose charitable status, and we should celebrate that it's perhaps going for the UK PLC, we're selling British education abroad, we're part of a product. And you may get scholarships to schools like that, and they'll probably still well worth going to. I also suspect there are other schools that are committed to access and accessibility. My sense is, fine, let's give them, let them keep charitable relief. Actually, go beyond that. Why not bring back assisted places? Make the qualifying level for schools who want to be accessible even harder, even tougher for public benefit, but give them more support as well, give them more government support and encourage that. And celebrate it, because the great strength of the independent sector is its diversity. The schools here today are really very different. Some of them won't recognise the sort of ethos that I'm articulating, but so what? They're providing for their school and their pupils in a particular way with extraordinary success. Fine, let's celebrate that, celebrate the diversity and the heterogeneity. But there are other schools like ours that are going to have to do a lot more, but are hugely committed to doing a lot more to make their schools accessible for talent wherever it is found. Thank you.